What's up, guys? Good to see you still cruising through the videos. I'm really excited about this section because I think a lot of people only talk about the shooting side of things. Nobody really talks about, well, how do I get started? What are the things I need on my website? You know, how do I answer the questions that I'm going to be asked often? How do I navigate those things? So, super excited about this whole section about the business Q&A. Here's a little table of contents for that first video. First thing we're going to talk about is what if you don't have a studio? Where can you shoot? How can you run your business out of a place where you don't have a studio? Then you're going to get a little intro with our photographers, Aaron and Jose. We're going to talk about the differences between male boudoir photographers and female boudoir photographers, how you can use one to your advantage. We're going to talk about what happens when you've got varying light conditions in your studio. And we're going to wrap up with my view on using strobes in boudoir photography. So with that, let's get started. Okay, so this is the studio upstairs. This is where we do all of my boudoir shoots, unless I'm traveling or something like that. There's a little kitchen area, dining, couch, and then I use a blow-up mattress actually, so don't feel like you can't run a business with a blow-up mattress. Clients usually can't tell the difference. But something that I I try and do with anywhere that I shoot is get these shears for the windows. It totally changes the color of the light, makes the skin tones way more clean, way brighter. It's really easy to do. You just get these compression rods to go between, and then you do, like these are from Target. I think I got these for like $5. So a super easy investment in whatever space you have. If you're like, I don't really like the light or the color of the light in my space, I've got red wood floors or brown floors or yellow walls or whatever it is. These will help out a lot. During this part, I want you guys to ask, whatever questions you may have. I know you wrote a couple down. I'm sure a lot of them are going to come out while we're shooting. But I've covered a whole lot of information that I think is really important in the PDF part of this course. So let's just do kind of questions and whatever you guys have. If I have something that I want to jump to, I'll jump to it. But go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to get into boudoir, how am I going to do that if I don't have a studio?
Great question. This guy, the great questions. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it, and there's a lot of information out there on it. I have pretty much had a studio out of my home for the different places that I've shot. So when I started in Denver, I had real estate's way cheaper out there than it is in LA. So I had a separate attachment essentially to the house that I turned into my studio. I got a bed and a chair is essentially this type of space except much more spread out. Then when I moved to LA, I was rooming with 3 guys. Let's see, it was me and 2 other guys. And so the only time the light was good was at about 8 in the morning to 11 a.m. So we had to do hair and makeup at 8 in the morning and be done shooting by 11. And I didn't even have a bed. I didn't even have a mattress. So all my shoots for about 8 months didn't have a mattress. So, and the idea that I don't have a studio, I think is more of a limitation on, what you think your clients would be comfortable with. I personally, especially as being a guy, I wouldn't recommend that you have photos where they're in your bed, your personal bed, but if you've got a second bedroom, if you've got a living room that you can put a blow-up mattress, doesn't have to be a queen or a full or anything, if it's even a twin, with your photography skills that you can do, that you can make a room look like something else, you can do. So that's the first thing. Another bunch of options are you can rent Airbnbs. There are difficulties with that, like check-in time is usually later in the day, like around 3 o'clock. So light's already starting to fade. And then if you do want to do the shoot in the morning, like check-out time is usually around 11. So you've got to be done by 11 and out of there. So that's a little tricky, but I found that if you reach out to them, sometimes if you're honest, this is what I'm doing a portrait shoot. We're not going to be sleeping in the sheets or anything, so you won't have to wash them. I'll clean up after myself if we have a couple hours in the middle of the day. Sometimes that works. I've heard of photographers making partnerships with hotels when they have extra rooms. You can shoot at your client's house. So there are a lot of different ways. I would say it's very easy to have your space that you can go to and count on and know it's not booked and those sort of things. But that shouldn't be a deterrent in whether or not you can or can't start a business if you don't have a studio, if that makes sense. Also, before we get any further, I forgot I wanted you guys to do just a quick little intro on what you've shot before, your experience with photography, a little bit about Boudoir and the direction that you guys might go in this way. So Aaron, why don't you kick it off?
I've been a photographer for a long time, but been working professionally for about 5 years, photo and video. And mainly when I shoot still photo, I'm doing candid shoots. I do a lot of event photography, and I also do portrait photography. I don't shoot weddings though. I'm not really into that stress of a wedding, but I like shooting people, and I also shoot action sports and travel stuff for myself.
Now you've been asking me for a long time about coming out to learn from you. You had a friend ask you.
Yeah.
So tell me a quick little bit about that.
Yeah, I had a friend ask about Boudoir out of the blue, wondering if I'd do it, and I actually really didn't know much about it. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing at the time, and then I found out that you did it, and I got really interested because you were essentially at the time transitioning from wedding photographer into just doing this, and I think for me, one thing I really like about photography and video, directing interviews and talking to people, is that I'm a people person, and I think that I like to please people and I like to make them happy, and this is a way you can do that. So I never really thought of it or thought that I could do something like this, but now I kind of see this is something potentially I could do, and it's also something that's becoming more popular and more women. I mean, people are just asking me about it randomly because I'm holding a camera. It's so there's this demand for it, and it's maybe something that I could do.
Definitely. It's definitely becoming more popular. It's becoming more common. It's becoming more accepted. I think 6-7 years ago, the idea of you did what? And now it's the cool thing to do. So I think a lot more people are interested in doing it and feeling more comfortable with the idea of doing it. So that's awesome. Jose?
My name's Jose Mesa. I started shooting weddings probably about 2011. Kind of dabbled with it in 2008 out of South Florida, and then in Cincinnati, Ohio, in both locations. And then people have asked me as well to kind of dabble in some boudoir stuff, but I never actually jumped into it. I do portraits and I do weddings mainly. Weddings is kind of my focal. I'm a romantic, so. But I've never actually crossed that boundary of adding this to a package. So for me, it's more of how can I increase my potential revenue with my business. At the same time, it's beautiful. It's beautiful art. The reason I got into photography is to give them a piece that they're gonna have as an heirloom. That's why I'm doing weddings. That's why I love it. I feel like this is another gift that they can have for each other at a minimum, or just themselves. And it's just something that I don't know much about. I haven't really dove into it just because of that male-female boundary, and being straight is kind of different for me, so I'm not sure how to approach it. So it's a little bit, uncharted waters, and so that's why I'm here.
You feel like there's some barriers to entry.
Totally, absolutely.
Totally. I think a lot of people at some point in their life end up doing wedding photography. Maybe not everybody. It might. I got that message recently from another photographer. He says, I'm a wedding photographer. I do a bunch of weddings a year. I've had a lot of brides ask me, I want to give this as a gift. I know you and I trust you. You did our engagement pictures. Will you also do my boudoir shoot? And for a bunch of reasons, he's passed all of those off to female photographer because he's not comfortable. He feels there are boundaries. What's appropriate? What will their fiance think? All these different things. And so I totally get that you can sort of talk yourself out of being able to do this. But I think especially if you already have the clients, you already have your wedding clients, if you already have people who trust you and are already spending money with you, to ask them to spend a little bit more can be easier than obtaining an entirely new client who you haven't built any
And
trust
they're in
with.
their best shape of their lives. It's like the perfect opportunity for them to take it. So I feel like I'm losing that opportunity.
Absolutely, and so they're in the best shape of their life, but also women have a really hard time just buying things for themselves. It can feel very vain. There are a lot of like, oh, you did a whole photo shoot just for you, just to feel beautiful. Like, think of all the other things you could have spent that money on, or think of, it's just at times it can feel, internally, it can be an internal battle. So women think they have to have an excuse for what else to shoot. So what a gift for a fiance is a huge one, where I hear like, I've been wanting to do this for 3 or 4 years, but I haven't had a big enough reason to do it. So then they're like, I've got a fiance, now I can do it, and I can do it for me as the excuse to shoot for him. So weddings are a good excuse, anniversaries are a good excuse, Valentine's Day are a good excuse. The ones where women are just shooting for themselves can be 30th birthday gifts, 40th birthday gifts. I've shot everybody from the age of 18 to 50. And it really just, you can feed off of those. You can feed off of those excuses that they need in order to get in the door and feel good about doing the shoot. So great, thanks for that little background. I think that you guys are, a pretty good representation of a lot of guys who feel like, I feel like I could do this. I feel like my photography is pretty good. I feel like I could give women a good experience, but will they trust me? Do I have to worry about, what their husbands will say, what their fiancés will say? Do I have to worry about, what other photographers will think? What if I don't have a studio? What if I'm shooting in my home? All these different things. So I want to answer a lot of those, or demystify a lot of those, that says like, not only are those, they could be challenges, but at times they can be assets too. So I wrote a blog post about 8 reasons, 10 reasons, I think it was 5 reasons to consider hiring a guy photographer. One is that men and women see women differently. Not always. I know a lot of women say when they look at a picture they can tell whether a man has shot it or a woman has shot it. I think a lot of guys probably feel similarly. I've seen some women with the absolute sexiest pictures. They're like the best photographers. And I've seen men whose work is more representative of like a more airy, beautiful sort of thing. But the way that men and women see women differently is one small difference in how the images could result. Another is that under the pretense of the excuse that it's for a guy, maybe a guy would be a better judge of what kind of pictures would be as a gift. That one, I don't really, it's not that I don't stand by it, but I don't really think that's, for anybody who gets a boudoir shoot, the woman gets like 90% of the gift and the guy, gets to see the pictures. So, but that's one that they can use to convince themselves. The idea of being like a little bit flirty in front of the camera, or being more comfortable in that setting, since women, or I suppose straight women, are more used to flirting with guys when you crack a joke, or when you're holding up a camera in front of your face. I've heard a lot of female photographers say like, I kind of wish I was a guy when shooting this, because I find that it can be a little bit hard to get that sort of like back and forth that feels like a little bit flirtatious, to get that look into the camera. I feel like it's probably much easier as a guy. So that's another reason that it can be an asset. I'm trying to think of the others. We'll come back to the others. I'll look up the post. But at times when you feel like, wow, all this is working against me, know that there are certain people who that's actually what they're looking for. They're kind of looking for that experience. So that's a little topic on the guy versus girl boudoir photographer.
So kind of going back to his question earlier, talking about space, kind of what do you do in a situation where it's a cloudy day? Obviously, we don't get a lot of cloudy days in LA, but it is a cloudy day. Are you rescheduling? Are you just changing your settings on your camera and just
Yeah.
with it? Okay.
So I try and shoot when the light is coming into the windows. You can see on the shears, they all have light hitting it. So I try and shoot then, because I like the way that it looks. I like a little bit more punch in my images. When it's cloudy, the images become a lot more moody, which is not bad by any means. It's just a little bit different. So the client honestly isn't going to tell the difference. They're not going to show up and be like, oh, that picture was, I wish it was a sunny day because that picture's a little bit more moody. You know, clients don't really know. So for me, I don't mind. It gives me more variety in my portfolio. If it's raining or whatever, it's darker. I shoot 100% natural light all of the time. I can bring out a strobe, but I find that it's a little bit intimidating for the client. So if your thing is strobes, then by all means. But everything I shoot is natural light. So if it's more cloudy, we shoot closer to the windows. If it's sunny, we don't usually put them in direct light. We put them right next to it to get all that light flooding in, but without it actually touching their skin is typically how I do. When it's cloudy, you can get a lot more moody. The shadows get a whole lot darker. So you can get that really dramatic look that's really popular right now. So it just depends. It's not a good or a bad. You don't reschedule. If you did have to reschedule every time the weather was not perfect, you'd be doing a lot of rescheduling. And my clients, they're taking off work to be able to do this. They've got a wedding coming up. They've got their deadlines. So it's not something that you can easily just change.
And your thoughts on like off-camera lighting? Do you use that at all, or?
I used to more, but we just did I do some e-commerce here and there. Like 95 to 98% of my work is boudoir, but on occasion I'll do something to connect with another business. So I think off-camera lighting has a time and a place. For me personally, with boudoir, I do everything natural light. I know a lot of photographers that do night sessions where they just take a speed light or a gridded box or something, and they do these super cool bodyscapes. You know, more power to you. It's not really my brand. You can use reflectors or I can't remember right now, but the black side of a reflector to stop light from reflecting. You can use those. What's that?
A flag.
A flag. You can use those to more, direct and control the light.
Yep.
But I found personally that the less equipment that I have around, A, the more comfortable the client is, B, the more quickly I can move through poses. I'm not setting things up. If you get good at reading good natural light, then you don't have to have something there to continually fix your light. Now I know I've got, a lot of windows in the studio. I've got a friend, a photographer in Seattle. He's got 0 windows. He doesn't have any windows. 100% of his work is strobed, which is under the conditions that he needs to work in for his studio. So whatever your system is, clients aren't going to be hiring you because you shoot natural light or you shoot strobe or whatever it is. They're hiring you because your pictures look good and you give a good experience. Your referrals are good. Those sort of things.